I'm not earning anything. This was 2018. I don't have a job. I don't have a title. I used to be vice president of something or a director of something, and everything just went away. There's this flattening of you are not you when you hit ground zero.
Yeah.
There's no way but up, or you could go into a very dark place, right? So there was
Yeah.
this intentional fork in the road for me personally, but I made a decision, and that decision stayed with me and it grounds me. So the pressure points come in. What am I building? What is this thing going to be? But there's this excitement of I'm building something that's never been built before. And the beautiful part, Sarah, is I've bootstrapped this. I've not taken a single penny from an investor. So that pressure I've not created on myself.
This is Better Under Pressure with me, Sara Milne Rowe, the podcast where successful people share what they do to thrive under pressure. I love this conversation because as well as talking about pressure, difficult deals, and making no money for 2 years, we also talk about what happens when you decide to trust the universe and how to ride moments of uncertainty. I'm talking to Joti Balani, a remarkable leader who walked away from corporate success to build something extraordinary in the world of AI. She has over 25 years' experience in technology and design, leading AI and automation projects for Fortune 500 enterprises and government agencies. But she chose to walk away from that predictable career with prestigious titles to start again from scratch, founding and building Freshriver.ai, what she now calls an organism rather than a company, that's attracting top talent who are seeking meaningful adventure in the AI world. Alongside this, Joti speaks at global industry, academic and social impact events like CES and Fintech Connect, and is a member of the Infrastructure Masons NYC Chapter, collaborating with data center industry leaders to ensure AI is sustainable and carbon neutral as it grows exponentially. This episode looks at how she managed the pressure of reinvention and how invisible forces can align when you truly commit to your purpose, and the role of what I call spirit and discipline in creating a meaningful future. So, this episode is for you if you're wondering, can I leave corporate life and create something transformative? How can I stay grounded if I'm pioneering an unknown path? Or what if my next chapter is about impact, not just income? Here we are, having been in contact for the last on and off 2 years. This is when we found LinkedIn messages that I hadn't answered you. You'd asked a question and it's 2 years later and I'm answering it. So I'm really thrilled that we're now finally in front of each other to have this conversation about pressure. How would you describe pressure?
To me, it's this feeling I feel within, because I have cultivated more awareness about how I'm feeling. And it's this feeling that's the opposite of chill, of not expecting an outcome. But when I'm expecting an outcome, especially in the space I'm in, that's when I start feeling pressure. I feel pressure of outcome of, let's say, signing a contract or winning a deal or getting a yes, or, will a customer, it's that part, but there's the pressure of, not family, because my kids are older now, but when the kids were growing up, it's like you're in this pressure cooker all the time because you got to like juggle. Now I've got a different set of babies that I take care of. So to me, it's a sometimes negative feeling, sometimes positive, because there's this anticipation. But in a nutshell, to me, it's being attached to an outcome. And I just feel that I'm feeling something because I'm expecting an outcome of whatever it is.
Okay, great. So I'd like us to sort of like unpick that distinction you made there between positive and negative. So if pressure is always connected to an outcome of some sort, what makes it a positive energy for you? And when does it tip into less helpful?
So when I am prepared, I feel prepared for, I've done the work and I know it's coming, and I know the outcome can go either in the direction I want or the direction I don't want. I've tried to do this sometimes where I said, I'm not going to attach myself to the outcome, but I'm human. And of course, I'm going to attach myself to the outcome. And, when you're in business in the professional world, you're there. That's literally what you do every day. It's like, oh, I need outcome. I need outcome. I think the response I get from a human being that's on the other side that I'm having a conversation with, either across the table or stuff, when they start taking in a direction that is very negative from a relationship standpoint, that turns it. I don't mind somebody telling me, hey, we may not do this, and I may be expecting that they're doing it. But if they say, hey, I'm not doing this because, and they explain it, to me, the pressure stays about even. But when they start giving me negative energy, and you know what I mean by that, right? People who are sort of, for whatever reason that you're sensing, that's when it tips over. I think it's more the energy I get from somebody else that tips my pressure into, I don't feel really good about this. And then there's all sorts of feelings that come up, and it goes down a different track. Does that make sense?
Okay.
And
yeah, it does make sense. And it sounds like relationships are at the heart of how you interpret pressure, either positive or negative.
Yes.
So could you feel pressure? So let's track back and say, when do you first, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Just to think, when did I start naming that as pressure, that feeling? And do you remember that? Do you remember a time in your childhood or past when you started to think, okay, that's pressure. I feel that, and that feels either really galvanizing pressure that's allowed me to think, oh, I didn't think I could do that, but now I can. Or the pressure that you were talking about where it's contracting and it's limiting and it feels like combative.
Yes, I actually very vividly remember this because it's etched in my brain. I've never been an athletic person. So ever since I was growing up, we'd all have to compete in sports. And I remember already feeling that I know I'm not going to win. Why am I doing this? And I would feel pressure because everybody else is held up to, they're the best. And I neither am interested in that. I've never been competitive with other people. That's when I realized that I feel pressure when I'm put in a position. Because parents and teachers, everybody will force you into a situation because you just have to. I distinctly remember our sports days in my elementary school years. I remember that. I may have been 7 or 8 years old and I remember being on the field for a running race. And I said, I don't even want to be here. And I know I'm not going to win. I remember that. That's my, I think, benchmark of when I started feeling like the next time I felt it, I felt that way, that I'm being made to compete for something I don't need or want or feel. And not that I didn't have confidence. I was very good at other things. I was told I was a great communicator, but there was just this time when you're a misfit somewhere.
Yeah.
And this pressure filled because somebody's expecting you to do something, or you're not the best in the class, or I was always an average student. So it's those kinds of things that made me understand as I was growing up what pressure feels like as one definition.
Yeah.
But then when I came into my own in my university years and I started to find spaces that I was very happy with, that's when it started turning into positive pressure. Like, I know I can do this. Like, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to do. And I go for it.
Yeah.
Then I feel good pressure to perform. Does that make sense? It's like almost like if you fit somewhere, it is positive pressure for me. And then of course it might take a negative pressure, but I know I sort of manage it a little bit better than being put into a position where I'm like, it's like skiing.
Yeah.
I have tried to learn skiing. I've spent so much time and money. And I finally realized a couple of years ago, I said, ice and snow is just something my body does not. I do everything. I play basketball. I can swim. I bike. I love doing all those things. But then there's things that I started telling my husband, because my kids all skied. I said, I'm just going to sit with a hot cup of cocoa and read my book and watch you guys ski. That's that feeling when you know where you belong. So now I've pushed back on things where I just don't want to be there. I don't need to. I don't need to. So even though that might mean I'm not with somebody, social pressure that comes in like, oh, you're not doing this, or I'm vegetarian. When my friends would say, how can you not eat meat, and how it's so delicious and stuff. And they would try to force me to eat, which I tried. That would be this feeling of pressure,
Yeah.
It's kind of give you a wide range of examples, but that's
Yeah.
how I sense it.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing in there, Joti, is this connection with being lit up by something that matters to you. Therefore, the pressure
Yes,
comes in because you want to achieve it and you want to
that's
win,
correct.
or you want to make progress in that. But if the purpose energy isn't there and you've been put in a position where you have to perform and it doesn't mean anything to you, that's when it becomes negative pressure.
Yes, that's it. That's it for me.
Yeah, cool. So, how do you now, in the work that you do, manage that? You were talking about the relationships when you get into a conversation or you get into a situation where it's more challenging, or they're not believing you, or they don't want to believe you, or you find yourself getting into what I'm interpreting as proof energy. Presumably you're still doing things now. You're doing things that really it matters to you. Your
Mm-hmm.
zone of excellence matters to you. What you're doing. So how do you hold, or how do you manage the pressure when you're going for a deal that's not landing, or when somebody's not listening, or all of those other stakeholder pressures that come back on you? How do you deal with that?
So this has been the 6-year journey I've been on ever since I left corporate and figured out finally what I love doing and what I see myself doing for the rest of my life. Literally, I'm all in. But my space is AI, which is, exciting and thrilling and scary, all bundled into one thing.
Yes.
And when I started, I made myself a promise that I would solve problems. Like, just, who am I? What's my purpose? And I said, I want to figure out the relationship between human and machines. Okay, that's literally, I wrote my purpose down, my 100 word, manifesto 6 years ago. I still have it in my notes. And so when I grounded myself in that, I promised myself then, no matter what happens, I'm going to stick it out. I just had this feeling that this is the path I need to pursue. And I would start getting feedback, and these were early years. And the pressure, I actually didn't feel pressure that I had to make money. And then literally, I was at $0 income when I exited a corporate in late 2017, early 2018. My father had passed. He'd been ill for 5 years. And I knew the end was coming. So there's this pressure of this and this pressure of this new birth. So it's almost like this upcoming passing of someone I love and this new, and he was there for that. So to me, this was like this foundation I've never felt before that said, this is my path. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I'm not attached to the outcome. I don't know how to explain that, but it says this could turn into, $1 billion company, which 6 years later, I can see that. I see a pathway to that in 5 years, but I'm not attached to that because I do this mental exercise that says, I'm not earning anything. This was 2018. I don't have a job. I don't have a title. I used to be vice president of something or a director of something, and everything just went away. There's this flattening of you are not you when you hit ground zero.
Yeah.
There's no way but up, or you could go into a very dark place, right? So there was this intentional fork in the road for me personally, but I made a decision, and that decision stayed with me and it grounds me. So the pressure points come in. What am I building? What is this thing going to be? But there's this excitement of I'm building something that's never been built before. So that, I think, balances me out. And this pressure of, I haven't closed a deal. Like, I've only had, a dozen customers in the last 6 years. But when I look at who these customers are, these Fortune 500 companies, which I had no idea I would be here. Literally, I had no network. So this acceptance and at least grace to accept I've actually achieved one step further. And it's like you're walking a path where there's no roadmap. Literally, there's no roadmap. It's not like I could go, I got a blueprint, I'm going to go follow that. And I love being in that situation. I think I'm an explorer at heart.
Yeah.
And so to me, I think I set up a framework for pressure management, although you're asking me that question, but I'm reflecting back to what that
Yeah.
was. And so when, there's been 2 years right after the pandemic, I was closing no deals.
Yeah.
I went 2 years with generating zero income. But the beautiful thing that happened is I had these amazing people come in and join me and now have an incredible team of former enterprise executives from Fortune 500 companies. Some of my former clients have joined me. So I think that helps me release pressure.
Yeah.
Pressure to produce revenue. You know what it's like when you're building a company. It's like, oh, you got to produce, money. You got to balance everything. This is my path. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I'm not attached to the outcome. I don't know how to explain that, but it says this could turn into, $1 billion company, which 6 years later, I see a pathway to that in 5 years, but I'm not attached to that because I do this mental exercise that says, I'm not earning anything. This was 2018. I don't have a job. I don't have a title. I used to be vice president of something or a director of something, and everything just went away. There's this flattening of you are not you when you hit ground zero.
Yeah.
There's no way but up, or you could go into a very dark place, right? So there was this intentional fork in the road for me personally, but I made a decision, and that decision stayed with me and it grounds me. So the pressure points come in. What am I building? What is this thing going to be? But there's this excitement of I'm building something that's never been built before. So that, I think, balances me out. And this pressure of, oh, I haven't closed a deal. Like I've only had, a dozen customers in the last 6 years. But when I look at who these customers are, these Fortune 500 companies, which I had no idea I would be here. Literally, I had no network. So this acceptance and at least grace to accept I've actually achieved one step further. And it's like you're walking a path where there's no roadmap. Literally, there's no roadmap. It's not like I could go, I got a blueprint, I'm going to go follow that. And I love being in that situation. I think I'm an explorer at heart.
Yeah.
And so to me, I think I set up a framework for pressure management, although you're asking me that question, but I'm reflecting back to what that was. And so when, there's been 2 years right after the pandemic, I was closing no deals.
Yeah.
I went 2 years with generating zero income. But the beautiful thing that happened is I had these amazing people come in and join me and now have an incredible team of former enterprise executives from Fortune 500 companies. Some of my former clients have joined me. So I think that helps me release pressure.
Yeah.
Pressure to produce revenue. You know what it's like when you're building a company. It's like, oh, you got to produce, money. You got to balance everything. And the beautiful part, Sarah, is I've bootstrapped this. I've not taken a single penny from an investor. So that pressure I've not created on myself.
I love this, Joti. I love this. There's so many things in that light me up listening to you, which is this sense of how when you absolutely know what you want to do in the world and you're starting even from scratch, having not been from scratch, it's such a powerful force. And I love the fact that you wrote your manifesto. I love the fact that you've written that down for yourself and that it ends up being this sort of anchor in any moment of potential pressure or like adrenaline flow, that you just return to that. You return to the anchor, which is the purpose, what it is that lights you up, what it is that you're going to cause in the world. And not only that, that when you anchor yourself in that, you attract others who want the same thing. And you hold your nerve.
Yeah, you're right about that. And I'm a big believer in universe aligning things because, I'm sure you've experienced this too, right? You've had your journey. We've talked about that before. I still remember that feeling of us having this conversation. That's what I'm like, we're just picking up where we left off.
Yeah.
It's this, the universe really attracts the energy that you give out of this other energy. And I have this conversation with other people who have left high pressured roles, which they knew they needed to for financial security, for whatever it is, they felt fulfilled at that time, but they don't anymore. This is rising. And love to introduce you
Oh,
to more people if you want to add them to the
honestly.
pressure thing. I've got and women in equal parts, and I don't see this as a gender thing. I've met equal amounts of men as women
Yeah.
who've talked about the same journey that I was through, and when they exit, uh, I spent 6 years finding this way, and so they feel so much better knowing that this is a pathway that's possible.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like I think us human beings are all connected. I feel there's
Yeah.
this bigger connection everybody has. We're not as individual as we think. And I think that helps release pressure valves, like when you have
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
pathways. So
Yes.
we support each other knowing that we're not alone
Yeah.
and that we're going to go on an adventure. The sense of adventure
Yeah.
is what everybody loves. I describe that to it and I mean it because I said, look, I'm on an adventure. You want to come with me? I love it. I've had everybody say yes 100% of the time. And I say, you have to be ready though, but not everybody's psychologically
No.
ready because there's pressure. And I can sense that when I have that conversation and I'm like, look, you need to make sure that I'm very upfront with them. I said, you have to make sure you're steady because I don't know where this is. We have ups and downs and we're going to have that as we ride this course because we are competing with the biggest, deepest pocketed technology companies, consulting companies, powerful people.
Yeah.
And that's another pressure that says, am I connected enough? Am I good enough? And I don't feel that. I feel that my anchor, as you said,
Yeah.
and then my team that's joined me.
Yeah.
Like when we show up on a call with a C-level of a Fortune 100 company, I feel like, look at who is meeting you. And it's not about me. So my pressure comes down because it's been dissipated over my entire team now.
Yeah. Gosh, yes, I love it. It's so interesting because since we spoke, I've set up a thing called Legacy Moves because, like you just said, I was meeting more and more clients who were saying, I don't know if I have another corporate job in me. I don't know if I'm ready for the next bit. I'm certainly not ready to stop.
Yep.
I want to do
Yep.
more,
Right.
but I don't feel like this is the right path anymore. Or I'm in a corporation and the path I want to cause within that organization is different. Have I got the courage to actually start to lead a different way within the same company? And so 2 years ago, I just set this movement up really with, and interestingly, it began with women. So like there were 7 women who came and we're just looking at what does legacy moves actually mean. But last night, actually, for the second cohort, I had the final sort of dinner of that cohort. And one of the things that came out of that was one woman said, I feel as invested in everybody else's journey than as my own. And the power of the force of the other people's exploration feeds mine. And so I love this idea of, pressure can be dissipated, but also it can be shared. And it then becomes a galvanizing force versus something that actually is depleting you and making you feel less than or, unresourced.
Beautifully put, Sarah.
Yeah.
And I think you actually started this movement at the right time.
Yeah.
And I was studying this phenomena because I actually started with the premise that I would build this. I don't call it company or organization. I call it an organism because it's people who are coming in with deep know-how and know-who because they're exiting at these high levels from their corporate career.
Yes.
That's literally 100% of who's on my team. And there's more of that going on. There's an exodus that had been beginning. I think the pandemic pushed it up a little bit, but there's more coming. And I think a lot more people, it might be a generational thing because there's Gen X, I'm Gen X, right? And there's a lot of even the previous generation where they're saying, I'm in my last 1/3 of my life, if you divide life up into 1/3. And half the people on my team are quote unquote retired from corporate, but this is their next adventure. So I say, your next 2.0, right? When people would say, oh, I'm retired. And so I said, you retire from something that you don't like doing. I tell people I retire when I'm dead, because you're retiring from life at this point. Right?
Oh my God, I agree with you so much.
Because your brain will start going, your body will start going, so you might as well just go. So I think you've hit upon it at the right time. There's so many people exiting, men, women, across the spectrum, doesn't matter, human beings that are saying, what do I want to do next? And the pressure they feel exiting is they hadn't prepared for what they were going to do next. They were just in it, and then one day it turned off, or whether they got laid off or whatever the reason, or they were prepared for that. And so a lot of people I met even 3 years ago who have stayed with me, who joined, were on this journey to exit. And they can, so, there's something happening, I think, in the air. I think corporations being part of something else, I think corporations are losing, for a better lack of a word, their mojo, because they're not giving purpose to their teams. People are feeling that it's all about the money and transaction. It's not about the people. And we can see that, we sense that. And so I believe that we are entering an era, and AI is just going to make this exponentially move faster. That people don't have to settle for being miserable inside a corporation, because they have the ability to go out and do that. They didn't think that this is even a thing. Like when I described to them what we're doing, I said, I didn't even know this was an option. I said, yeah, you can have a portfolio. It's a portfolio of career, by the way, is another pressure releasing, because they said, there's so many things I wanted to do, but I just don't want to just volunteer or just be on a board. I want to do something in AI. I don't know what it is. So people are now doing portfolio of things that make them happy, which was the idea at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually the pressure of leaving something that you feel familiar with, but on some level is not necessarily fulfilling you, can be a much more damaging and draining, sort of slow burning pressure than actually jumping and taking a leap into something and igniting yourself into what is actually possible, and also the spirit of what lights you up, which is what interests me. And, my real interest is the combination of spirit and discipline, because I think spirit needs a sense of discipline in a way to be honored. And discipline on its own without any spirit is just so tedious and very dull and very robotic. So what you're describing here is your journey into that, into leaving and developing something that absolutely taps into your spirit. And now you're creating a structure around it of, in a way, discipline. And what I'm hearing you say about those moments of pressure when the deal doesn't come in, or that you can revert to your mission, you can revert to your manifesto, you can remind yourself. Do you actually have a practice for that, Joti? Or is it, what if we were going to look at this, maybe what you don't necessarily call a discipline, but a practice that enables you to stay strong in this exploration that you're on? What would you say is one that really, really reminds you?
So let me see if I can show you this, if it comes in. I don't know what that's going to do. You see this?
Yes. Everyone has been made for some particular work, and the desire for that work has been put in every heart. Rumi, lovely.
I have 6 of these from the last 6 years, and every page has something. So I write. I've just been writing. I'm describing, and I tell you, there are things I wrote 3 years ago that are coming true now. I at some point I'm going to write this book, because I have all the material. The spirit, I love the way you said that, the spirit and the discipline.
Yeah.
For me is every morning I wake up at 5:36 and I go for a walk. I put on my shoes. I'm out, like there, and I listen to things that change my mind, because I also know that I know so little about the world. I know so little about this beautiful thing that we've created. I have this curiosity and this wonder and appreciation of being. and being able to look at nature. Otherwise we're just rushing through life.
Yeah.
So I go back and I connect to nature. I say there's something bigger than all of us. There's something bigger than this. And it puts everything in perspective, not just that, it's this deal I got to win. I go back and I write and I say, I'm on this adventure, and whatever comes my way, I will take it. I'm not so attached maniacally to a final outcome, because I don't know what the final destination is. We will go back to where we came from, which is, we're all energy in spirit.
Yeah.
And so to me, I just remind myself of that. I go back and I look through this, all these feelings that I've sort of tried to communicate and put words down, listening to Rumi and stuff. In the last 6 months, I actually realized that there's an entire practice called Stoicism that actually encapsulate things that I've been feeling and I've been writing. And I say, I know I feel this is right. And that beautifully gave me a framework and know that I'm not alone in thinking about this. So in moments of that extreme, let's call it pressure for an outcome, I go back to that. And then there's just pure love. You are thankful and grateful for what you have, your family, your health, your kids, your friends, the people on my team. I just be very, very thankful, because I said this one thing is not going to define me or us or what we're doing. I don't give that power. So that's the other key thing that I promised myself 6 years ago is I don't want to be afraid of anything or anyone. And I will never give my power to somebody to decide my worth. So that somehow has been etched into, say, my spirit or my brain, and I'm able to bounce back off it. I'll tell you a very interesting story. 2 years ago, we engaged with a bank in the US, a federally supported bank, and the CIO did the first step with us, which we do this thing called strategic assessment, because we say we're going to extract your use case. And the business folks loved what we were doing, et cetera. But the CIO turned around to me and he said, I'm really disappointed because I thought you were going to give me a list of vendors, AI vendors that I should go meet. And I said, nowhere there did we tell you that. We told you we're going to, right? 2 years later, and we built what I believe is going to be the first of its kind agentic AI platform. He took our meeting to meet today. So what was a disappointment to me 2 years ago?
Yeah.
And he's bringing his entire team in for that. So, these are the lessons that teach me whenever I have what looks like a disappointment of something not moving forward, I remind myself of that they will come back. So every time someone tells me, oh, we don't think we're going to go move forward, I said, call me when you're ready.
Yeah,
I don't say call me if you're ready. Call me when you're ready. I have said this, I kid you not, probably to at least 50 executives, because they were not ready for whatever reason. I understand, they're also human beings. They're working towards whatever, strategy or budget, or it's not there, or they went with somebody else. Oh, some of the stories I could tell you, Sarah, they've taken my work and given it to existing vendors and said, can you deliver this? Mm-hmm. Oh, I've got so many stories. This is a fun one. This takes the cake. I had a CEO of a small IT consulting firm that I was introduced to. He courted me, wasted 3 months of my life. That's the thing that I also I'm very protective of, is my time, space, and energy. But, I got introduced. So I said, all right, I'm going to do that. He courted me 3 months, wined and dined me, took me to places, etc., only to come out and tell me, shut down what you're doing. You will never be successful. Come work for me. Wow. You say, what is that pressure? It wasn't. To me, it was like, okay, so I did ask him, I said, so wait, why do you need me if you think you can go do AI yourself, which is fine. Hey, the market's big enough. He goes, because I don't know how to do what you do. I said, oh, thank you for the validation. And do not ever call me again.
That what you said? Brilliant. Yeah. Well, that's so interesting because I've had quite a few examples of people just literally nicking stuff and putting it out as their own. And it's the stuff that really can get to me, like I can feel like a fury about it sometimes. And I'm learning how to manage that. But it's interesting that you use that as a pressure point for you, because I can absolutely relate to that. But it sounds like you don't use it as a pressure point. Actually, you've turned it around. You've turned it into something as validation. You just got to go faster.
Exactly. You have to do relentless innovation. You don't stop.
No.
Like if you think about yourself, the last time we spoke, you had a framework. You've gone and created newer frameworks. When you have conversations like these with people, you're collecting so much knowledge and insight that if somebody stole your stuff even 6 months ago, it's out of date.
Yep.
That's what I tell people, when they're like, oh, why do you tell people everything you know and knowledge? I said, you're assuming a mindset of scarcity. I'm assuming a mindset of abundance, and that this is changing. And if you love what you're doing, you're going to constantly ask questions and be curious and take things forward. You're just moving so much faster than everybody else. If they think they can steal us, like, oh, that's great. First of all, I said, oh, wow, they must think I'm doing something really good. And so they take it. And what do they call it?
Plagiarism?
The highest.
Oh, yeah. Compliment.
Yes, is imitation.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the pressure is also the story we tell ourselves.
Sure.
It's our reaction, which is the only thing we can control, not anybody else's action. That is the other thing that grounds me. Is I've been reading about Buddhism and for many years, because when I was in corporate, I had to deal with a lot of things, as you can imagine, with the three characteristics, right? Female, brown, immigrant, and I was in telecom at that time. And I started to read these books because I had to figure out how to handle what was happening. For the whole host of things. And I don't never felt victimized. I always said, I need tools to be able to deal with that. So I'd already been on that journey, but it didn't help me in the 2 years that burnt me out in corporate, like to a crisp. And, I hit rock bottom, but then I built back bigger and stronger because now I was doing what I wanted to do. And so part of the message I kept learning, and I think it etches into your brain when you read and you let it simmer, is you cannot control what other people do, but you can control your reaction. And that even Stoicism has in it. Like there's I call it a prayer, a mantra, whatever they say. It goes something like this, not verbatim, but it says, give me the grace to accept what I cannot control, the courage to do what I can control, and the wisdom to know the difference. So I tell myself that all the time because I know I'm going to encounter challenges and people who give me pressure because they're doing things that I have no control over. I can understand it and I be empathetic. That's the story I tell myself. Not that I think what they're telling me is that I'm a failure. I say that's their issue, not mine. You have a choice to accept what somebody does to you that creates the pressure, or you can decide to say, no, thank you. I understand what and why. Maybe I do, maybe I don't, but I don't accept this as a judgment on me that I am fill in the blanks. I'm a failure. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm a woman. I'm blah, blah, blah. Fill in the blank. People can tell you that. None of that affects me. None of that. So I've kind of trained myself to what I can feel the reaction coming because I am human. But it's almost like don't react. I've had to learn to do that, not be, I used to be very reactive in growing up. And I said, I have to pause. If you take that one deep breath, it really changes everything because your brain remembers all the other wiring that you put into it, right? So
Absolutely.
It's a journey. It's a journey.
It's a journey, but I'm hearing within it that you've got some real discipline around it. You recognize it, and you have a practice that actually stabilizes you or regulates any impulsive or intuitive response that you want to have a choice over. So you're buying choice in what you're doing, which is great.
Exactly. Yes, choices. That's like the key word. Is you make a choice every day to react, to respond. And remember, we're also causing a action to somebody else. So I also realize that the other person is not a monster, or they're a human being who are also not perfect. So I also try to create that empathy and say, I'm going to move on. But I'm absolutely 100% certain of the market we're in, of what we're building. The feedback we're getting is validating it. So of course I know percentage-wise, because I'm constantly, Claude is my assistant, my AI assistant for the Anthropic. And so I actually use AI to make sure I'm looking at things holistically.
Yes.
So that helps also, because, us human beings where we're colored by many things, nature, nurture, you call it. But I actually use AI in that way because it's more objective than we are, depending on which model you use. It's actually fascinating.
I think that's a really interesting, and I'm hearing this a lot with some of my colleagues around how they're using AI to understand themselves more fully.
Mm-hmm.
And this hasn't been a conversation that I've had on Better Under Pressure actually up until this point, but you're using it as a technique in a way to manage pressure, huh?
I love frameworks. I love developing frameworks, whether it's to manage pressure or build something or whatever is how I conduct my life. And so I had a conversation with it, and then I paused it and I said, okay, I got enough, where it helped me arrange my thinking, because at that moment in time, they were just disparate ideas, but I knew kind of what I wanted to connect, because you could connect many things to this. So I said, okay, stoicism and, human wiring, the way our brains work. I'm actually listening to a book called How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. Is the second book of his I'm reading. And it's fascinating to me, when he talks about how the brains react to LSD. And so to me, they talk about ego dropping. So when you talk about pressure, I think it's also where our ego's playing a role. So there's so many ways I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just a fascinating word that people banter around and chuck about, and actually understanding the relationship that you have with it. And I think, for me, pressure has been often a very useful force, because it's encouraged me, or it's slightly pushed me to the edge of something that I felt like I couldn't do. And it's often proved to me that I can do it. And also it's had a negative, I'm very aware I've got a much more attuned barometer as to when that's just too much, and it's now turning into maybe stress or something that actually is much more destructive. But on the whole, my background is around where pressure has just been very enabling for me. And actually, if I don't have enough of it, a certain amount of it, I feel like I need a bit, there's a bit more. What else? The exploration, really. Where's the adventure? Where's the sort of next exploration or experiment that I can try? Because like you, I will retire the day I take my last breath. I have absolutely no doubt about that. I need it. I need exploration and adventure, and client adventure, as well as, spirit adventure, as well as travel adventure. All of those things need to be in my life. And I feel like understanding the relationship that you have with what we're calling pressure here is a way into that.
Mm-hmm. I think this one word that you have caught on to it's like a tail of a tiger. And, as you were just talking to me, I think pressure makes us feel alive.
Yes. Totally 100% agree with that.
Because you feel like you're being versus just doing and just getting on with it. you feel alive, especially when you find what you talked about spirit and discipline. I think when those things align, I think it just makes you feel alive, and you can feel alive. You're right. When I don't have that, like I've been feeling that over the last few weeks, and I just got out of it. So I'm like, what is happening? Like, why am something is missing?
Yeah.
I haven't progressed. What is it you feel kind of stuck? But then you unstick yourself, and I think you're right. Pressure is probably the thing you needed, because pressure does move things out and cause flow,
Yeah.
Pressure flow, water.
Yeah.
If you think about nature, you need that. The water flows towards the ocean, and if it gets stuck, it builds up pressure.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the way to look at it. Like, you build pressure and you release, you build pressure and you release.
Yeah.
Maybe that is the way humans are supposed to be wired.
Yeah, totally agree. And again, as long as it's your choice, like you're choosing, as opposed to the pressure coming externally and you're feeling like you haven't got a choice, as you said, or it's being done to, as opposed to I'm choosing.
Yeah. Yeah. When you said, but people steal your ideas, or you feel that fury, I feel that fury when someone wants to push me into doing something I don't want. I would say it's less pressure. It's like I get to choose. So this is the other thing that flipped, is I will make a choice, because up until even my corporate, like, I love my parents, I was raised all that stuff, but I was made to do what I was made to do. I was made to marry at a certain whatever, right? I love my husband, my kids, all that. But I felt like I was somebody else on somebody else's project plan. Like you do. And I've had, I'm blessed. I've had a wonderful life, but I felt like up until I started this 6 years ago, I felt like I had to, like, you need a job because you're raising kids. You need to have income. Even though they might be jobs that were killing you, or, there'll be moments of happiness in there, but it's like, do I really have to report to this, fill in the blank of a boss? And I just felt that switch. I feel like I am now in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
Where choice, I think choice is a powerful word. I think pressure and choice have a very strong relationship.
Yeah. It feels fitting to pause here, because what Joti said there really is the bottom line. The choices we make on a daily basis directly impact the pressure we feel, for good and for bad. What I've enjoyed so much in this conversation is that Joti and I aren't talking about purpose as a career strategy. We're talking about it as a spiritual discipline. It's about having the courage to listen deeply to your inner spirit, and then having the discipline to translate that whisper into tangible action. What I've learned from incredible leaders like Joti is that purpose is a continuous conversation with yourself. It requires us to be both explorer and architect, willing to venture into unknown territories while at the same time building structured pathways. For me, the magic happens when you combine spirit, the thing that lights you up, that excites you even though you don't know exactly where it's leading you, with the rigor of discipline, that commitment to back yourself, when you're not just dreaming about your next chapter, but you're carefully constructing the way as you go, by remembering and connecting to something meaningful to you. What Joti is reminding me of here is that it isn't about abandoning your corporate identity, it's about evolving it. It's about recognizing that your most powerful leadership emerges when you align your inner truth with your outer work, when you start expressing it through small movements, seeing purpose not as a defined, distant goal that you're attached to, but instead as an energy already moving through you, building momentum. The key is to recognize it and keep tuning into it. So let's remind ourselves of some of the things that helped Joti remain true to her path. Her 100-word manifesto. She uses this as a living, breathing compass, intentionally connecting to the bigger purpose so she can enjoy the journey as an explorer. She talks about walks in nature to connect to something way bigger. This sense of perspective has come up a lot in this podcast. How do you broaden your perspective to lift yourself out of the eye of pressure? Well, nature is one way. Connecting to ancient philosophies is another. People have trodden this path before us. What can we learn from them to guide us? Listening regularly to things that change her mind. Gosh, how often do we actually do that? If we're to adopt and explore a mindset, this is so important, to explore new territories, not simply reinforce our old ones. I will never give my power to someone else to decide my worth. I'm going to have to say that again. I will never give my power to someone else to decide my worth. Agreed. As Joti reminds us, what we tell ourselves directs our attention for huge benefit or for absolutely no benefit at all. Because our brain is always listening to what we tell it, and it can't distinguish between fact or fiction. That's why it's so important to remember that we're reinforcing our worth with every story we tell ourselves. We can never outperform our own self-image. So what self-image are we choosing and reinforcing every day? This has to be intentional. One great way Joti does this, though, is turning a feeling of client disappointment into, call me when you're ready. I love that. But finally, the key message that seems to have run through this whole conversation, being intentional about remaining unattached to a final outcome. This is hard. When we're exploring new opportunities or in a moment of significant change, becoming attached to an outcome can be limiting and sometimes actually paralyzing. I've been in situations in my life when I've felt that something is no longer fulfilling, but I know that I've let it linger too long because I've been too fixated on the perfect outcome. And it's funny because I only left teaching after I had taken a year out to have my second child. And I don't think it was a coincidence that the pause and the space that that year gave me birthed not only my daughter, but the start of my own entrepreneurial journey. I love the fact that Joti deeply trusts the journey without attachment to a final outcome. So if you're listening to this already feeling that there is more or something different for you to do or to be, ask yourself, am I ready to discipline that energy into meaningful progress? Wow, Joti, thank you so much. I would love you. There's a consistent bit in each of the podcasts where I say to my guest, if there were two things that you would pass forward to anyone listening to this podcast who wants to be better under pressure, what would you offer?
I would say the number one thing is know your why. You got to anchor yourself. Before anything else, for your whole being, you need to anchor yourself. And if that's time you need to figure that out, it will. Otherwise, you're just another thing being rushed through the waters, and you're rudderless. That's number one.
Just on that, I really love the point you make about in the whole of your being is the bit that really stood out for me there, because I think sometimes we can think that the why sits in your head and you have to be able to articulate it, and it's a mind process. And I feel increasly that the why can sometimes sit somewhere else in your body. And that whole being, joining up all of those messages, that the joy of your body and the intelligence of the body can tell you, as if your mind is a part of that, yes. But sometimes I think we give the responsibility over to that too soon.
That's correct. Get out of your head. And a lot of people have not taken the time to actually find out the why. In fact, I mentor a lot of young kids since 2020. I'm actually building talent in this space.
Brilliant.
And that's the first thing I ask them, or even they're people making career changes. I said, why do you want to do this? Like, what do you love doing? What problem do you want to solve? A very simple framework I give everybody is I said, just write down, like I wrote my manifesto, right? What's the problem you want to solve? Why do you think it's a problem? For whom it's a problem? What are you marking out as success? And what are your current measures of success? You got to give people some framework.
Yeah.
I said, write that out. So that's one. Yep. And then two is know that the only control you have is over your reaction. I mean, these two things are like these fundamental building blocks upon which the whole house of managing pressure, the pressure house is built.
Yeah.
If that foundation is not strong, then it will always buckle. You will not have anything to hold on to that center and the core of why you're doing what you're doing, and know that you cannot control anybody else's reaction but your own or their action, and do that inner work. You have to do the inner work. You have to work with people like yourself. Like there are guides I've had, amazing people, total strangers in many cases, that they say something to you because there's no pressure of, interweaving. Talk to people and give. Okay, I'll cheat. I'm going to give a third one. Give. You need to give. Give your knowledge, give your help. When you give, and I gave, when I was shifting out, I had no network, I had nothing, nobody. People on LinkedIn would reach out to me and go, hey, can I talk to you? I said, sure. And it wasn't out of like, oh, I'm going to get something out of them. Give without expectation. It's the most beautiful thing to give. I've had, and by the way, some of my clients from my journey have joined me. I'm so excited. Yeah. I have another client that introduced me to this incredible woman who just got laid off from corporate, amazingly talented. She's joined me. And I'm like, wow. Yeah. When you give, and I told this one client from 4 years ago who just joined me, she retired and she joined me. I told her, I said, you were my anchor. She was my reference for every subsequent customer.
How fabulous. For her to know that, right? As well.
Oh my God. I said, Laura, I told her, Laura, I don't know if I've ever said this to you, but I want you to know this right here, right now, that I would not be here because she was one of 5 people who consistently she goes, I loved what you were doing. She told me that. And she gave with no expectation. She gave.
Yeah.
And we've come full circle. Yeah, so this thing about spirit of giving, it's just very powerful. A lot of people just think about taking, but when you give, you're giving so much to the world, your know-how, your know-who. I share networks. I will introduce people. I said, trust. Once you have that and you build the trust. So those are the 3 things. Know your why. You're only responsible for your own reaction, and just give.
I love that. Joti, thank you so, so much. What a joy of a conversation.
Same here.
I feel called to finish this episode repeating those final words from Joti so that we can all tune into them with the whole of us. Know your why. Know only you are responsible for your reaction. And give. Give without expectation. God, I love that one so much. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Better Under Pressure with me, Sara Milne Rowe. If you enjoyed it, please do subscribe and let us know what you found useful or what you'd like to know more about. And don't forget, if you'd like to sign up for our fortnightly Pressure Points newsletter, where I summarise key points from each conversation, you can find a link at saramilnerowe.com. If you're interested in any of the practices mentioned, check out my book, The Shed Method. Alternatively, you can find us at Coaching Impact or me on LinkedIn and Instagram. Better Under Pressure was produced by the fab team at Smart Cookie Media. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, goodbye.